Folks, look to your right. This area, this is Dealey Plaza. And right here in Dealey Plaza, every day is November 22nd, 1963. People travel from all over the world to experience this. But if you want to get the best experience of what it was like to be here that unforgettable day in November, it helps to understand what life was like for President Kennedy and America in the early 60s. In 1963, civil rights was just getting started. President Kennedy introduced the very first civil rights bill. He was instrumental in bringing civil rights to America. Also in the early 60s, the space race is just getting started. The Russians had launched a satellite called Sputnik, and the world was very surprised at how successful that launch was. And President Kennedy, he vowed that America would be the first to put a man on the moon. Also in 1963, communist aggression, it is spreading around the world. Most of Eastern Europe was forced into communism by the Soviet Union. And in October of 1962, President Kennedy has the Cuban Missile Crisis. America was on the brink of nuclear war. President Kennedy went on television and he gave the most frightening broadcast in American history.
Good evening, my fellow citizens. This government, as promised, has maintained the closest surveillance of the Soviet military buildup on the island of Cuba. Within the past week, unmistakable evidence has established the fact that a series of offensive missile sites is now in preparation on that imprisoned island. It shall be the policy of this nation to regard any nuclear missile launched from Cuba against any nation in the Western Hemisphere as an attack by the Soviet Union on the United States, requiring a full retaliatory response upon the Soviet Union.
That was it.
I forgot to ask, can everybody hear it okay? Is the volume good? Okay.
Atmosphere in 1963 here in America. Schools all across the nation routinely have bomb drills for their students. American homeowners were building underground bomb shelters as fast as they could build them. Americans were preparing for war. President Kennedy gave that broadcast in October of 1962. He told Americans that the world might be coming to an end. And on the morning of November 22nd, 1963, President Kennedy gave a speech outside the Hotel Texas in Fort Worth, and it was raining. But by the time the president landed in Dallas, the skies had cleared. It was a beautiful day, 68 degrees, and the weather determined if they were going to use the bulletproof bubble on the back of the limousine. President Kennedy flew in Air Force One from Carswell Air Force Base in Fort Worth, and he landed at Dallas Love Field at 11:40 in the morning. The motorcade cars are Kennedy blue.
Here on the right is a depiction of the Shawnee Trail that went from Texas to Oklahoma. They're 6-foot handmade bronze steers, no truer length, being wrangled in by cowboys. This is a really great place for pictures if you get a chance to come back by. Also coming up here on the right is a really pretty waterfall. And up on the top of the hill is the historical cemetery.
Lincoln Continental convertible limousines. And in the first car is the President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, and his wife, Jackie. Also in the first car is the Governor of Texas, John Connally, and his wife, Nellie. But folks, Governor Connally, he is sitting ahead of the President in a jump seat that sets 3 inches lower and 6 inches to the left of the President. And that is a very important detail. And 2 cars behind is the Vice President of the United States, Lyndon Baines Johnson, LBJ. So folks, 50 years ago, the President and the Vice President would travel together. They do not do that anymore. So folks, just before the Texas trip, Governor John Connally says to President Kennedy, Mr. President, I don't think you should come down and do a stop at 5 cities. You just can't come down to Texas and ask people for their money. So why don't we just throw you a really big fundraiser in the capital, Austin? You'll make more money doing that than you will doing 5 small ones. But the Kennedys were very insistent, so it was set to go to Texas in November, to San Antonio, Houston, Fort Worth, Dallas, then Austin. Presidential motorcades are planned for every one of those cities. And President Kennedy did do motorcades in San Antonio, and in Houston, and in Fort Worth. But the motorcade here in Dallas, it was different. Because see, folks, they haven't finalized all their plans. They don't know where they're going to have the fundraiser here in Dallas. The presidential motorcade in Dallas was not finalized until just 4 days before.
There's going to be a few times that I have to pause the recording because I'm not exactly where I need to be. I didn't say anything one day and I had a lady yell out, "I can't hear anything," scared me half to death. So now I make sure that I let you know it is only on pause. You have not lost your hearing.
Now, folks, any of you guys know why Jackie Kennedy was on this Texas trip? You know, a lot of people at this point will say shopping. But, folks, Mrs. Kennedy was not making personal appearances. She had lost her baby in August. But Mrs. Kennedy was just as big a draw as her husband was. At fundraisers, women, they flocked to her. And those women went and told their very wealthy husbands, donate big to the campaign. So just before the Texas trip, President Kennedy says, "Jackie, I need you to come." It was the first time that Mrs. Kennedy had been seen in public in 9 months. Now, folks, the presidential motorcade comes right down the street we're on right here, Harwood Street. But President Kennedy, he made 2 stops in between Dallas, Love Field, and downtown. The motorcade leaves Love Field at 11:50 in the morning. Does any of you guys know that he made 2 stops between Love Field and downtown? Here's what happened, folks. Up on those roads up there, the motorcade's traveling pretty quickly, about 45 miles an hour. LBJ and Governor Connolly are both screaming, "Hey, we got to hurry up and get to this fundraiser. We're doing 3 cities in one day." But the few people that were up on those roads had some signs holding them up that said, "Mr. President, please stop and shake our hands." Well, folks, JFK was the kind of president, he wanted to be seen by everyone. So he said, "Driver, pull over." And he shook those people's hands. It was a group of Catholic nuns and a group of school children.